Hi, this is Todd Olthoff from ToddOlthoff.com coming back at you with another screencast. In this week, we're going to take a look at the Open Directory service that's built into OS X Server. Now, Open Directory is a directory that gets set up that basically houses all of your different settings related to your server. It houses your user accounts, groups, those sorts of things, and keeps them all together so that you've got a directory that your server accesses to pull that information. Now, Open Directory is necessary for a number of services in OS X Server. For instance, it's necessary for Profile Manager because Profile Manager uses it to manage your users and then send out the profiles you need, as well as managing your devices because your devices will go into the Open Directory as well when you bind them to the directory. It also is necessary if you want to push any of these settings automatically to your different users or machines. So it is one of those central services that if you're planning on using some of these other services that are in here and you want to use it in a way that you can manage them from the server, you're going to need to set up an Open Directory. Now, Open Directory also sets up a particular type of user account. It allows you to set up a user account for network accounts. And so what that does is those network accounts then allow users to log into their account on other machines if you store the home folders on the server. It gives a lot of different options for that. And so what I would say is if you're going to want to use Open Directory, you want to have some of your users maybe access their home folders and have those stored on the server, you want to push settings to them and those sorts of things, then what you're going to want to do is make sure that you set up Open Directory before you set up your users and groups, or you're going to have to set them up all over again. Let me just tell you the difference between a local and a network account, just so you get an idea of how that works. Local accounts are machine-based, and so that means that they're only really available on the machine that you set them up on. Local network accounts are accounts that are set up on the server, and so they have the potential then of being available anywhere. They're not just tied to a machine, they're tied to the server instead. And so you can access those various services over the network. So that's really the difference between the two. And like I said, for the network part of it, you'll definitely need your Open Directory. So if you're thinking of doing that, I just say follow these tutorials in order because what we'll do once we get Open Directory set up, we will talk about how to set up some of these users and groups so that they're network accounts. All right, so this is the Open Directory interface here. And so as you can see, very simple, not a lot to it. All we need to do to set it up is throw the switch. So we're just going to go ahead and do that right now. And what we get is this wizard that kind of walks us through the process of setting up Open Directory. Now we have three choices here. We've got the ability to create a new Open Directory domain. That means we don't have one yet, and so we want to create one, and that's what we're going to be doing here. I can join an existing Open Directory domain as a replica. Now what this means is that in some cases where your server is mission critical, you may want to have a backup server ready to go that's replicating the main server in terms of all of its settings and those sorts of things. And so what you would do is set up this particular server as a replica to join one that you've already got, so that you've got your backup in place, so that if the main one fails, you can always fall back to this replica to make it work. And so that's what that means. Or you can restore Open Directory domain from an archive. So if you've got an archive that you made and maybe something went wrong with Open Directory, you can destroy the one you have problems with and then just restore from an archive that you've already set up. And I'll show you how to set up an archive in this screencast. So we're going to go ahead and just create a new Open Directory domain, and I'm just going to say next here. Now it asks us for a directory administrator name and password. Now this is for the Open Directory itself, and there are going to be times when you're going to want to make changes and server is going to ask you for the password to make changes. This is different than the password that you have set up for your machine or for your user account or even for a regular administrator account. This is a separate password that you have for Open Directory itself. So you're going to want to remember what this is and put this somewhere, because this will be one that you're not going to use frequently, but when you need it, you're going to need this specific password. No other password will get you into the Open Directory. So you can set up your own account name for whatever you want. I'm just going to leave it alone for our purposes here, and then you set up a password. So let me just put one in. Okay, once you have your password put in, you can say whether you want to remember it in your keychain or not. You know, for security purposes, you probably don't want to do that. And maybe uncheck that so that way it won't be in your keychain. If you don't really care, your server's not going to be accessed by very many people, you can leave that on. It's up to you. So I'm just going to leave it on for our purposes. Say next. And now it's going to ask for an organization name and an admin email address. And so the organizational name can be anything. In my case, I'm just going to put my name down there. And then an email address that if something goes wrong, that email will be sent to that particular address. So I'm just going to put in my own email here for the site and go from there. So say next. So now it tells us I'm going to set up an open directory with this administrator name, this administrator account name, organization name, and then the email. And so we'll go ahead and say set up. If you ever want to go back and fix it, you can say previous or cancel. We're just going to set this up, and you can see it's now creating my open directory master, and it's putting all of these pieces in place that I'm going to need in order to go forward with some of these other services. So it might take a little time for that to create. It all depends on your particular situation. So I'm going to let that run here, and as soon as it's done, we should see our open directory master. Okay, so here we are back at the open directory screen. So you can see that my open directory has been created, and so this is what the open directory looks like. It'll show you your servers in here, and then your particular open directory master will be listed in here. And then down here you've got the locales issue down here, which is then again your default local in terms of your all networks. Let me just click on that, and you can see that it's pointing to the server that I need it to. And what you could do is list a bunch of different subnets here. If you were on a network that had a bunch of different subnets, maybe more than one server, you could say, hey, I want this server to serve clients on these particular subnets. You can add those in there. And then you can say which servers are the ones that these subnets are taken care of by. So in this case, I'm just doing a local network, so I'm just going to leave it alone, but that's where you could do that. And then you could put some comments down here on what you're doing with it. Let me just cancel that because I'm going to leave that alone. This by itself is the open directory, and as you can see with the service, there's not a lot you can do with it. You can either just destroy it by clicking this minus button here, and if you did that, it would destroy your open directory, which would also destroy all of your settings that you have in it. So if you set up users and groups and things like that with Profile Manager, it would destroy all those settings in here. So you want to be careful when you do that. You only want to destroy your open directory if you're having problems with it or you're reinstalling or something like that. I could also add other servers in here for open directory. If I just click on the plus here, I could put in a server address, the admin name and password, what the parent server is. And you can see here I can put whatever that is, and then add directory name and password, and then add this replica server here. Now what a replica does, as I told you earlier, is it can provide a failover and also maybe load balancing for open directory clients. If you've got too many, you can have more than one server that's working, and it will provide a failover if one fails, but it'll also balance the load if you wanted to have these replicas paired up. In this case, we're not doing that, but I just wanted to show you that you could set that up by doing this. Let me just cancel there. Now, if you come in here to the settings, so there's one more thing we can do, and you see here we have the option to archive our open directory master, and then you can see down here we can promote a replica to master. Now, I'm going to create an archive here, but a replica, if you had created a replica with the plus that I showed you over here, you could promote that replica to master. So if, for instance, this server failed and I wanted to have the other one now become the master because I've got some issues, I could promote that replica to become the master while I'm working on this one, which would then become the new replica or whatever I wanted to do with it. So just kind of letting you know how that works if you've got to manage a bunch of servers and things like that. So let's go ahead and look at an archive of an open directory master. Now an archive will create a backup of your open directory. And it's nice to have this once you get your server all set up the way you want it, is to have this backup so that if your open directory ever got corrupted or had a problem with it, you could destroy it and then basically set up your server from this archive. As I showed you when we went through the setting up of the open directory the first time, you can choose to set up open directory from an archive that you create. This is how you create that archive. Let me show you how that works. I can just say, open directory here, give it a name like that. I can put whatever I want. I can actually choose. Actually, I got to choose where I want to put it. Here's where I put the name. So let's say I want to put it in documents or whatever. I could give it a name like open directory and then put it in there, save that. So now I've got that there. I can have an archive password. So let me put that in here. I'm just going to make one up. And then once I do that, I'll say next. And there we go. And so now it's going to create this sparse disk image in that location. So let's go ahead and say archive. And you can see now it's archiving my open directory master. Now, you don't want to really do this archive until you've actually got your open directory all set up. Right now, I'm archiving an open directory where I don't have any other settings in it, so it's like a default one. But if you wanted to have a default, maybe to start over, you could do it this way. And then if you ever needed to restore from archive because you had a problem, you could do that. So this is our status bar here. I'm going to let this go ahead and archive, and then when it's done, I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Okay, here we are on the other side. So that archive is created and everything's set and ready to go. So that's all I have for this week on how to set up Open Directory. Hopefully that helps you get started with the service. As you'll see, we're going to build on this now in future screencasts to really make this work. You just want to make sure, again, before you do this, that your DNS is in good shape and everything's ready to go. So if you don't have DNS set up, make sure that you've already done that by looking at the previous screencast. So that's all I have for this week. I'll be back at you next week with another screencast to help you learn how to do more things with your Mac. If you're interested in help in setting up your own server, feel free to contact me at todd@toddolthoff.com.